Do you all have this little bag of pleasure?
I have the TastingBOX 3.
Before we go, as usual, you know, I'm quite controversial. So we're not going to follow the same pattern than the box suggests. I usually, as you imagine, I taste the wines beforehand as I do the recording for Alexa's, and therefore I think in order to sort of stagger the wines in a proper way, we should do the two red first, and then we finish with the Schoenenbourg Riesling. We were chatting early on with Csaba, and there's definitely a touch of sweetness from the Schoenenbourg, from the Riesling. So I think it's better to finish with. And there's so much to be said about this wine. And as you know, probably now, you know, I talk so much that, you know, if you give me that opportunity, I will not stop. So
yes, I think by that time, Chris, we all gonna be sleeping, so that's okay.
Having dinner.
Yes.
Csaba posted something on, I think it was on Instagram, where basically the recording is the two of us chatting about me recording Alexa, and then, you know, adding a very strong French accent to that
yes
format. And I mean, I'm not really happy about it, but that's the way it is. I just can't change it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Shall we crack on with the case? I'm just going to do my non-official intro where I say that we're going to taste the Perfect Cellar, my Perfect 3 and my Perfect 6 tasting box with Christopher Delalonde, Master Sommelier. And you probably heard already that we got a very good news today that Perfect Cellar is now the best small online wine retailer in the UK, according to Decanter magazine, which is one of the largest and one of the most prestigious wine publications in the world. So we're very happy about it, and thank you for everyone who's been supporting us. Yeah, it was a few judges who voted us, but actually for the support for everyone, thank you very much. We're starting with Montepulciano. Yes.
Yeah, Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, yeah.
Well, good luck, Chris.
You tell me when I shut up, not when I start, but when I shut up.
Okay.
So you know the format, you know, from always remember, you know, from north to south, as you know, eyesight, nose, and then palate. So a few words on the hacienda itself. I think what is really important is sort of putting Vino Nobile into the format. So we are in Italy, we are in Tuscany, we are in central Italy, as Tuscany is located. Vino Nobile is also quite toward the south of Tuscany. It's still quite hilly because you still have the following of the Alps, the Alpine, as they call, that run through Chianti and then kind of slow down and kind of get into smaller hills toward the Vino Nobile. But still, you've got a beautiful elevation and altitude that maintain the ripeness level, but more importantly, the freshness into this beautiful hilly, but more importantly, sunny part of the world. Hence why, you know, here we are 100% tempranillo from a great vintage 2017, sorry, which was a very ripe vintage. So you really have, you know, a plush, lush, dark, you know, color through that. I mean, imagine you can't really see my finger on the other side. So you really have that sort of concentration of color, at least on the side. So that gives you an idea of how much the wines will. What somewhere to expect from that glass of wine. Italy is very complex for many reasons, but if you again go back into the sort of age profile and the dates, as much as the French started this system of appellation in the 30s, so 1936 is basically where the AOC board was created, and then most of the appellation started in 1936. There is quite few that were drafted beforehand, but 1936 is really the first vintage as such as the qualification happened. Italy is much later than that. It's 1963. And then so they started to draft following the French system, because it's actually quite clever. Not because it's French, it's because it's actually a good way to sort of structure an appellation to give you more understanding. And I'm just going to open, you know, some commas. A colleague of mine, my assistant, actually went to South Africa for a week 2 weeks ago. And then that's the one thing that she reported to the grower, is that South Africa is one of those countries where you actually there's no structure whatsoever, and it's not even just the wild west. It's just nobody understands, because there's, as I said, there's no much structure. So you start from ward, which is like basically, you know, an area. It could actually be just one farm, to a district, to a region. So it's very confusing for any given person, even me, that, you know, try to understand and live off wine, to really put something from South Africa with a clever and an understanding and a proper explanation on any given wine list, or even a description on any given wine. So it's very, very complicated. So 1963, the Italians started. And the first appellation that was sort of that became the DOCG. So everything was DOC, which is kind of entry level as such, if you can imagine. And then you have the apex of quality, which is DOCG. So it's a denomination d'origine, controllata, and garantita. So again, the cahier des charges, the structure of work is much more written, is much more qualified, concentrated, and have much more restriction in order of what you can use, what you can't use, the level of ripeness, the sugar level that you need to reach, the alcohol, the sugar, and so on and so forth, because sugar is alcohol, as we all know. So 1980, Vino di Montepulciano is actually the first DOCG in the Tuscany to appear. So it has a very historic aspect when it comes to that. So obviously, you know, 47 years or 57 years later, they definitely know what to do and what to expect from their terroir, obviously, from their grape variety. So the grape variety is sangiovese, even though they call it Montepulciano. It's actually a clone of Sangiovese, but doesn't have much difference between what you find from Chianti to Brunello. Like if you go to Brunello di Montepulciano, they call Sangiovese Brunello. So you know, it's a sort of shorter definition in order to help a little bit people sort of get an area within the grape variety, or vice versa, grape variety within the area. In that wine, actually, funnily enough, as I said, 2017, it's a very warm vintage. So it's plenty fruit, plenty of ripeness, therefore plenty of sugar, and quite a good level of alcohol. I'm not sure where the alcohol sits on that one. It's 14%. So you can imagine that, you know, again, in the early 2000s, well, it's not that far away, but we're not really used to you know, wines with that much of alcohol. 12.5, 13 and a half. So 14 was already quite a statement of where things were obviously leading to, with the global warming taking really a big grip on warmer region such as Tuscany, the southern of Italy, and everything that is coastal, especially in Mediterranean area, Spain, and so on and so forth. So the Azienda Agricola Canneto itself is actually quite a small-ish estate. It's 30 hectares with about 26 planted and in operation as such. And it's really it's located on the western part of that appellation. So again, being on the west, you're a bit further away from the sea and a bit more protected, but the altitude really helps you to maintain that freshness. But on the top of that, as Italy, I was explaining about the regulation, aging is extremely regulated. So Vino di Montepulciano, Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, sorry, cannot be released 18 months prior. So you have to age it for, so make the wine, obviously harvest, make the wine, and 18 months later only it can come on the market. It has to be aged for 12 months to 18 months in barrel or some sort of vessel, and then it has to be aged between 3 or 6 months in bottle before being coming to the market. This one has been 18 months in oak. There is no new oak whatsoever, and we'll talk about that when we taste the wine. And a mixture between French and Slavonian oak. And why Slavonian? Because it's really the original oak that Italy used. It's still the same family than French oak, but has a little bit less components, especially vanilla component. And more importantly, it's also cheaper. An oak barrel nowadays, just to give you, I think we talked about that beforehand, but an oak barrel nowadays, so 228 liters content, is roughly £1,000. So imagine when you have an estate in Bordeaux that buy 1,000 of them, you need to have a serious bank account just to be able to pay the bill. But more importantly, if you think about 228 liters that you divide by 75 centiliters, so you get about 300 bottles. So from the start, you're going to have to add £3.50 per bottle just to pay for that barrel. So we understand now more and more why the price of wine is just getting completely crazy and out of control, on the top of everything else, obviously. So let's start. So yeah, as I was saying, very deep, quite deep garnet actually, even sort of ruby, with a sort of ruby rim. As I said, you can't really see anything. If you put your finger, through that, you can't really see. So it's really kind of concentrated in terms of the color itself, quite dark as such. Allez, on the nose, what do we get? Well, the first impression to me is sort of it's two direction. You have sort of a ripe, dark, almost jammed fruit aspect, and then on the other side you have almost like a floral, a bit more kind of actually herbal.
I was gonna say herbal.
Yeah, definitely.
To me, a lot of herbs.
Yeah, cooking herbs, oregano, sort of garlic, sort of.
It's oregano because they're Italian, obviously. Sorry, that was a bad joke. I'll cut this out. It's fine.
Yeah, but oregano is a fantastic herb. Don't get me wrong. It's just lovely. But that's basically the two sort of main family that you're going on the first approach. And then as you give a bit more air into the wines, that to break down the molecule and get more, hopefully, from it. It is quite mellow. It's very sort of tender. You have a ripe character, but it's also, ripe, red, and black sort of berries. There's a bit of plums. There's a lot of sherry, which is classical when you find on sangiovese character.
For me, that sort of cherry notes also bring that sort of freshness on the nose already, because it doesn't have that sort of fully jammed up.
It's
dark
not.
fruit.
It's ripened and it's obviously warm vintage, but you don't have that clumsy, rich, and just exuberant without any style or any finesse into it. There's a touch of savory. There's definitely a touch of sweetness, but vinegar, the sweetness of vinegar. So it's definitely sort of wet earth, a bit of brambles, a touch of you get a little bit of sort of vanilla, a little bit of kind of oak elevation without being new oak whatsoever. You got a bit of pepper, you got a bit of cinnamon coming through as well. It's sort of spices, but more importantly, it's super vibrant. It's it's very enticing. You put your nose in there and you think, I want to test it. Chris, sorry, excuse my friend.
Now we have to take that out.
You have to cut that one. Yes.
We might lose our decanter award for this, Chris. That's not very good, is it?
It's natural for me. But again, it's very vibrant. There's beautiful freshness to it, and as I said, it's very attractive. So on the nose, and then now on the palate.
I already tasted it. It's just freaking brilliant, actually. It's just lovely. Very good acidity.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, beautiful drive.
Tannins are very well integrated.
That's super. It's super lifted. Again, with that kit, we always recommend to keep it in the fridge until you actually taste the wine, enjoy the wines, and get it out roughly about an hour before you do. And that's exactly what I've done. So my wine now sits probably about 13, so slightly cooler, but that really kind of elevates that sort of vibrancy, that freshness, that tonality. And more importantly, because of that acidity, you really have a lift. Again, that really is enticing. It's you have a glass and you're thinking, oh, I'll have a second glass and then a third glass. So it's one of this wine that is very moorish.
I was going to say, actually, I already poured the next red, if you guys want to do it, because that might need a bit more air as well, I think, just while Chris is talking. That could be long, it's just like a few hours. Yeah.
Yeah, again, you got all those kind of definitions, the cherries, the stone fruit in general, the blackberries, there's a touch of currant, maybe even black currant. Definitely the cooking herbs, the spices come again from the oak aging, a bit of cloves. Again, this kind of savory with dry meat character, pure meat even. And the savory notes to me really carry on and brings even more to the fore the acidity to sort of elevate and freshen the entire offer. And as Csaba was saying, toward the end, you've got this beautiful ripened, rounded, but still kind of present tannins that just kind of give a beautiful frame to the offer. So you can imagine it's still a young wine, even though it's 6 years old. So you can imagine you could sit that easily for another couple of years, given that tannin and that food structure that will not go anywhere. But the tannins will definitely soften within the next, couple of years without that. Even though they're already superbly integrated, you could imagine that they will kind of mellow down and really, really focus the finish on a almost ethereal character.
And in terms of food, what would be your thought on this one?
I see this wine being sort of transitional. It's not, again, you can't really put everything into one bag, but it's not really that sort of summery wine, but it's not other wintry wine. It's perfect almost throughout the season. You could definitely drink this at a cooler temperature during the summer on a barbecue with mate, because it's really delicious. Also, you could drink that with a bit more elevated type of food, with more kind of spicy food, or a bit more kind of complex food with obviously protein based. But you also can go really with more savory and more wintry character. With boar, with hunting games and so on. So there's a sort of a very large plethora of dishes that you can drink these wines from almost from aperitif style, if you go for cured meat, saucisson, whatever, to actually, even if you want to go to the cheese aspect, you can almost do that as well.
I was actually going to suggest, or maybe it's just in my mind, and maybe it's because of that sort of herbal character, but something like grilled vegetables. I don't know if that would work with something like this. What do you think, Chris?
For me, mushroom, if you do like a nice selection of mushrooms of some sort, with like a tartuffe of mushroom, that would be just, or even if you do just on a pan with a bit of butter and maybe some herbs and garlics, that's something that would definitely rock your world, because again, the acidity will lift. You've got that savoriness, you've got that earthiness, that plow earth character that comes through, and more importantly, to me, it's all about the texture. You really have a rounded, smooth texture that can also work well with. Nowadays chefs work very well work their fish the way they work their meat. They start it on the pan and finish in the oven. So again, if you are like a sort of meaty fish such as monkfish or even sea bass, yes, the view is that our fish should be with white. Well, yes, but no, you can do whatever you want, as long as, okay, if you take a monkfish especially, and you get like a nice red wine reduction with it, that will work wonder. Again, because of that texture and that beautiful depth that there is into the wine. How much is that on the
full price is 26.95, which is, I think it's a very reasonable price for a quality of this. But we're doing 25% off until Friday.
Yeah.
So it's 20 quid basically.
Perfect.
I think it's a fantastic wine. I was gonna say it's just very easy on its own as well. It would go down.
The approachability is stunning. It's really, really, really stunning. The drinkability, the moorish aspect is really, really beautiful. It's really, really nice glass of wine.
The next one is going to be a bit bigger.
It's what you say is very, very true. But also Rioja is 3.5 times the size of Ribera del Duero. Ribera del Duero is ancient when it comes to the wine production, but it's actually quite recent when it comes to the staggering quality that the wines have established. I mean, originally in Ribera del Duero, there is one estate and one estate only is Vega Sicilia. So Vega Sicilia is the wine of the king and the king of wine for the Spanish culture, and they have controlled that area for decades. But the Ribera del Duero, what is really amazing about it is actually the elevation. Ribera del Duero heightened about 860, 900 meters high. So you can imagine, even though you're in the middle of arid Spain, it's extremely cold. So the diurnal is really excessive, which maintain again that freshness throughout the ripening season. The only thing that I find with Ribera del Duero in general is for me is the modernity, because it's such a sort of a young appellation. People still kind of going a bit crazy with new oak, and sometimes I find the oak a bit too much, and therefore the one's quite tricky to approach young, and you have to wait a couple of years, whereas the Rioja been there for 100 years, and then even though they play with different grape variety, obviously Tempranillo being the main grape variety used in Rioja, with others. There's 5 grape variety in Rioja, and 2 of them are actually white, funnily enough. Ribera del Duero is definitely a sort of a younger market or younger production, but when we come back to the Canigos, so it's Crianza. So the system of the appellation system in Spain is again quite similar to what the Italian and the French are working from. You have sort of DO, and then you have DOCs, but the DOC, funnily enough, compared to Italy, is actually the higher and the highest, because it's DOCA, so it's calificada, the meaning of it, unless you got in Priorat, because obviously they are Catalonian, and then they use the Q for calificada.
In the meantime, I kind of realized why you get this Alexa voice job perfect, because your pronunciation is perfect in any language. So I think I will suggest that we're gonna do Alexa in many more languages, if you like. Yeah.
This estate Dehesa de los Cananigos is actually one of the oldest established, as the estate has been owned by a few dignitaries, Spanish dignitaries, and the family that owns it now are moved in the 19th century. But funny enough, they never actually produce wine for themselves. They produce grapes, and all the grapes were actually sold to Vega Sicilia. That was how they make their money, and how they survived out there. And eventually they started to sort of look at options, because the estate is 500 hectares large, so it's quite a massive farm. Obviously they have a different crops all over the place, again as a real farm, and only 60 hectares are planted in with vines. I mean, 60 is still for a lot of different region quite a large production facility, but in a great scheme of things is actually not much. Luis San Busto is now in charge of the estate since 1985, and the official vintage when they really launched their own product as such is 1989. So I was saying about the Crianza aspect attached to it. So they use the same structure than the Rioja region. So what they call synclianza, which is basically disappearing, which is basically a non-aged product that can be just produced 6 months of aging and then released on the market. So, easy wines, unpretentious and very, very easy access. And then you got the crianza, which has to be aged for 2 years. So 1 year in oak and 1 year in bottle usually. And then you got the reserva, which are 3 years, and then the Grand Reserva, which has 5 years. So again, the 3 years is 2 years in barrel, 1 year in bottle, and the Grand Reserva is 2.5 and 2.5 roughly. Because again, Grand Reserva are only produced in top quality vintages, because otherwise they wouldn't sustain that length of time in oak and no in bottle before they would be on the market. They would be already, on the other side of the hill and rather tired. So this is Tempranillo dominated as a blend, but it has also a bit of merlot and some Cabernet Sauvignon. And they also produce a white made with a grape variety called Albillo. So Albillo is a very unique grape variety that you find in Ribera del Duero, a little bit planted all around Spain, but it's really Ribera del Duero, to the point that in 2019 or 2020, actually Ribera del Duero is now allowed not to produce only under the appellation red, but also white from Albillo and rosé. So that's just for the general knowledge. Here, the oak usage is actually quite dominant. They still have that sort of approach to winemaking. So it's very common, but in that one is 100%, but it's American. So again, if you rewind a little bit, why American? Well, it comes back to a very simple direction. Is because the first market for Rioja wine, so Rioja basically really developed and grew and exploded in terms of production when the phylloxera happened at the end of at the beginning of the 19th century. No, the end of the 19th century. So 1865, 1890. They don't really know exactly. They know where, but nobody knows really the date as such. When it was really discovered is about 1890. And funny enough, it was first discovered in London. That's another story. In Kew Garden, and then so whilst the French region were all devastated by this plague that nobody really understood, nobody could buy anything. So because of the natural barrier that there is with the Pyrenees, phylloxera didn't really yet cross until basically someone brought it from the shoe or whatever. Nobody knows really why. So again, because you couldn't buy French wine, but the oak barrel were really in small production at the time. America was the biggest market, and they had a lot of oak barrel because the Appalachian forest that is basically on the east part of the country is obviously massive, and they have a culture of oak barrel. So they look, we like that, and also it's much fresher than and much cheaper than the French. Why? Another little comma. So there is sort of 3 families of oak. If you really take the larger picture, you got the Quercus alba, which is the family of American oak. The Quercus saccidifleri, which is a branch of the European oak, but mainly the French oak, and the Quercus suber. The Quercus suber, we'll put that straight away on the side because it's the Quercus, is the oak, is the cork tree, is the cork oak. So the biggest difference between the saccidifleri and the alba is that first of all, the American oak has much more dominant of vanillin, which is a macroscopic, it's actually a molecule, and as the name suggests, vanillin gives the flavors of vanilla. That's why in Rioja you always have much more vanilla flavors in some of the Ribera del Duero, and the ones that use usually American are much more that tonality of vanilla, of clove, of cinnamon. It's much more intense. But more importantly, the American oak is basically cut. You cut it, so what you do, you get much more stave out of it. The European oak, you can't do that. You have to open it up. So therefore, you have a lot of loss. But so obviously French or European oak in general is much more expensive because of the loss that occurs. But because you follow up the grain so nicely and so tightly, the oak or the barrels that comes from it are much more tighter, so there's much less leakage. Whereas the American oak in general tend to leak a bit more because obviously the sewing is perfect, but it's not as tight as you can get from American oak, and therefore American oak, because of the production and the larger production out of a tree, is also much cheaper. So there is an economic as well as an historic and more commercial aspect why in general Spain still have that relation with American oak through that the country historically. I close the camera. I told you if I start I don't stop. Okay, so here we go now. Okay, on the color. So if you compare the two wines, if you have a bit of the Tempranillo of the Sangiovese left, I mean it's really stratospherically different, even though the wine is much younger. It's 2019, because again Sangiovese has much more color in its skin, whereas Tempranillo has definitely less. So this is much more, to me it's much more ruby, it's much more actually garnet, almost like mahogany, and also there's sort of almost like an orange rim to it. That to me is already kind of a certain evolution, but that makes also sense because it's a crianza, and therefore the oak aging as well as the bottle aging really help with that evolution of color in general. So quite a nice viscosity for a wine that is stratospherically at 15.5 alcohol. So this is quite I mean, in general, today it doesn't really shock anyone. Again, 2019 was a very ripe and generous vintage, but 15.5 is actually quite a lot to take on, especially now with the new government duty. 15.5, you'll pay a bloody fortune just in duty to get your wine out of the bottle. It's just anyway. Get me started.
I was gonna say actually, I'm surprised that they actually put it on. I mean, if they just keep it on 15, they would have gone away with a lower duty, but then they didn't.
Labels have ordered a year beforehand, so they never really know, how much. And the law is it's about 10% up or down. So potentially, it could be a 16% of alcohol wine, but label at 15.5. I mean, 16 would be actually quite stratospheric nowadays. It's almost going into the sort of port structure, which is kind of scary. Anyway. So on the site, you really have that sort of garnet. Again, if you put your finger through, you can actually see it. So it doesn't have the same sort of concentration than Sangiovese. However, on the nose, again, on the nose, it's very it's very open. Again, it's extremely generous, but the flavor profile is completely different. Here we talked about it's much more plums, it's much more blue plums, it's much more, for me, it's more figs. Again, you got a bit of berries. There's definitely an olive touch, black olive tapenade, a bit of chocolate, definitely some earth character in there, wet earth probably.
Almost like mint for
yes,
me.
There's that definitely. I'm coming to that with that sort of again mentally a bit more sort of herbal, again, cooking herbs. But to me, it's also what something comes really up front is sort of sandalwood, which is a very aromatic wood. You don't really see that very often as a tasting note. But to me, that's the first thing that comes to mind is sort of sandalwood. But also there is sort of a nutty, like roasted nuts, as well as meat. Again, the savouriness of Tempranillo, is coming through. But also you got that sort of red berries underneath, which is very much the merlot touch, and also a bit of cassis, which is definitely the Cabernet touch. So even though it's sort of little dots around, and Tempranillo dominates in terms of flavors and blend, they are somewhere dotted in the aroma that you can decipher within that note, that nose profile. And again, you know, clove, definitely some cinnamon, you know, are showcasing the use of oak in the winemaking in this wine.
Yeah, definitely a lot darker on the nose.
Yeah, it's also quite
but
concentrated.
Bit more chocolate, bit more that
Definitely
sort of...
some chocolate, you know, bitter chocolate, but it's also quite concentrated. It's
Yeah.
very sort of you know, all together. It's almost
Yes, quite, yeah.
You know, a bit taciturn to an extreme, if I may say. Even though it's very generous and very open, but you feel that there is much more to come in years or even in a few hours. That you know, especially when you have that full bottle, you can imagine by the moment you open it to the moment you finish it, the wine have changed dramatically in that sort of you know, half an hour, even 2 hours if you decant it. And that's where, you know, I'm going to come to that later on, but definitely something that I would open up early in order to sort of get the wines to sing, but more importantly also trying to reduce a little bit that sort of alcohol, because if you put your nose really into your glass, as I tend to do because I've got a massive nose, you got that heat on the nose, you got that heat of alcohol that come through.
Even on the palate as well.
Yeah,
I don't know
I'm
if
not
you
there
tasted
yet.
it.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not. You know, it's in balance, but you get that tiny bit of heat at the end, which is obviously
Again,
yeah, they
that's
didn't lie about the ABV on that.
no, precisely, but also that's sort of the signature. You know, it's the benchmark of what the wine is about, and where as a winemaker they want to be at, and what they believe is a sense of place for their product, which you know, you only have to appreciate and enjoy as such. So on the palate.
I think it's only you, Chris. We all tasted it. It's
I mean, this is, if you forget about just the fruit and everything, if you just think about the structure, again, given the temperature at which I am tasting the wine, which is roughly about 13 still, it obviously, you know, get more grip from the tannin structure, but it's almost like a box. As much as if you make comparison, that doesn't really make sense, but to me it does. The sort of the Vino Nobile de Montepulciano is almost like spheric, you know, and very enjoyable and very rounded and smooth. This is almost the epitome. It's almost the opposite. You know, it's almost more kind of square as such, with I wouldn't say adjacent tannins, but you got much more intensity of tannins. You really have that grip that, you know, elongates the wine, as well as the fruit and that point of heat from the alcohol we talked about. But again, you know, it's super ripe flavors. Again, it moves toward the savory, a bit more savory than actually on the nose. Dark fresh fruit. It's very fleshy. You know, maybe a jam, a touch of jam at some stage. Also, I got some sort of earthy plow earth, definitely some bramble. Come back again, some tapenades, you know, the black olive aspect. Definitely a lot of spices, cooking spices, as well as oak spices. You know, the cinnamon, definitely the clove are very much adjacent there. It's beautiful weight. Again, I like that kind of concentration without being too weighty, too concentrated, and too flabby as such, or too wobbly. You know, it has a beautiful acidity that really lifts. So it's all in balance, as Csaba you were saying. But it's obviously, you know, it's a big boy. It's a big boy. It's as much as the Montepulciano you would almost drinking on its own as an aperitif. This is probably the second bottle. It would make sense actually to go from Montepulciano to the Ribera del Duero if you want to follow that crescendo of body, of power, and sort of concentration.
Yes, here I would need food, definitely.
Yeah,
With
definitely.
This one.
The wine
I can't...
that definitely needs you know, proteins as such, in order to sort of refine that sort of tannin structure. Definitely open early, definitely decanted, and definitely larger glasses if you have them, in order to kind of give the wine that opportunity to open up, to sing, and really come to the fore with what it's best. It calls for a richer type of food, maybe more spicy food as well, maybe more concentration, maybe more concentration and layer of flavor, in order to sort of match it. You wouldn't it would be harder to enjoy that wine with a piece of fish, to me. You would probably go lamb, or you would go venison if you like games, or beef, or classic, or again a beautiful risotto with mushroom, but something kind of earthy. This is where you would go for that type of wine, I think, in sort of direction. Again, what is really amazing is that beautiful acidity, and that really is due to the elevation, because, as I said, you've got that diurnal that really maintain that freshness, and therefore you get that in the wine, that again keep that aspect of, you have a glass, you have a taste of it, and you want to go back. You want to go back. You want to go back. Maybe at a different pace, as I was saying, to the Montepulciano, but still, it's something that has a certain very drinkability. Maybe a bit less mooish than the Montepulciano, but it's not about it's not a competition. It's just very much different style of wine, from different country, from different background and historic, and I think they both have a seat on the market. Is definitely according to what you fancy. So it's almost, the Montepulciano would be maybe the Monday to Friday wine, whereas the Crianza will be more the Saturday or Sunday, because you got a bit more time to think about it, prepare the wine, get it out of the cellar, open it up, get the glasses out, and so on and so forth. Get the candles out. This is for you, mate. Prepare the candles. Saturday night. Sorry. It's one of those wines that, even though today, deliver a lot, you can imagine that, sitting down in the cellar for a couple of years without a doubt, even though it hasn't been aged in oak and in bottle prior to release. It's something that will take time, easily, without a blink, as such. Easy 2 years from now, not a problem whatsoever, for that type of wine, because what is key here is the balance. Even though you got the alcohol, even though you got that ripeness and that savouriness already kind of showing up, but there's so much to it. There's so much potential that, yes, the aging is probably something to add on to the potential of buying something like this. If you buy a bottle or case or whatever, you can definitely enjoy that almost 3 bottles in the winter, and then 3 bottles in the spring, and then forget it during the summer, and then come back the year after. That's my commercial side. So again, as I was saying, sort of more of a winter wine. And even though I would almost go, if possible, with, to me, charcoal flavors would work very well. It's again, we're going back to sort of barbecue style, even though now there's inside barbecues that you can buy, but that would work wonders with something that has that sort of flavor profile, given the quality and the orientation of the Ribera del Duero. But anything to do, yes, exactly, game, but also spicy dish. In the UK, we all know we love our Indian food. You can imagine that with Indian food, to a certain level of spiciness, would work absolutely, fantastic. The tandoori flavors of some of the dishes would actually, be really good fun, really good fun. But anything Oriental, if you Lebanese food, Turkish food, Armenian food will work. Will be really a good match.
Talking about Asian food, I already poured my white wine, because I think that would be something which might be quite interesting with Asian cuisine.
So this, as I was sort of talking about early on, something I when I did the tasting for Alexa, I wrote 3 pages just on that wine, because there's so much to be said. It's well, let's let's start from the beginning.
Let's dive in, shall we?
Let's start from the beginning. So the Schoenenbourg is a Grand Cru. So again, given the alsace system and the structure at which every single region is binding to, so Grand Cru are the best sites in essence. Diverse sizes, diverse villages from north to south. So we're in Alsace. We're in the northeast of France, bordering with Germany. Actually, the Rhine River is the division between the two countries. But even though you're northeast of France, and you won't believe that, but it's the truth. It's the region that received the most solar. That's not the sunniest when it comes to the sun itself and the blue sky, whatever, but much more solar time than any other region. You would think, no, Chris, you're wrong. It's the Provence. No, it's Alsace. It's actually quite mind blowing. The Haut-Rhin is at the south, and the Bas-Rhin, which is normally, if you think about it in French, Bas is the bottom and Haut is the high. But it's the opposite. You know, the French, they do everything differently. We can't trust them. So Bas-Rhin and Haut-Rhin. And so different villages have different Grand Crus. So there's 51 Grand Cru together in Alsace from north to south. Every villages have certain Grand Crus. Some of them are divided in different villages. So the Schoenenbourg is actually quite vast. The Schoenenbourg is 53 hectares. So when you think that the Ribéral du Thouérault we talked about is 60 hectares altogether planted in vine, this is one Grand Cru in Alsace. So again, given the size of the site itself, you're gonna have a lot of different soil exposure from the bottom to the top, from the east to the west. So it will give you a lot of different exposure and therefore different sensitivity to the one. And the translation into ones will be very different according to where you are or which plots do you own, because most people, they own, a little part there, a little part there, a little part there. So they will probably harvest at different time. And within the Schoenenbourg, you also have different grape variety, because different grower will have plenty different grape variety, again according to their plot and their location within that vineyard. So Schoenenbourg is located between two different villages, Rigvier and Zellenberg, and the Edmond Rentz business. So it's quite an long established estate. I think it's about the Rentz have been in Alsace for like 17
since the 1700s, I think.
Yes, it's something staggering. But Edmond, with the name, so obviously the grandfather, the grandfather was called Edmond, and then now the gentleman that runs the estates is called Edmond also, and he taken the lead 25 years ago. So obviously with 25 vintage under your belt, you understand your sites, you understand what you're trying to do, you understand the different quality of the vintage, what to do, so you take a bit less risk. But again, when you think about 2019 was an amazing vintage in France, but again in Alsace, and here you have 100% Riesling. So even though they own 100 different plots through the entire appellation, where not just Schoenenbourg, they have obviously other Grand Crus, but 100 different plots. Imagine the amount of work. Okay, we're going to harvest that plot today, and then that plot in the afternoon, and that plot in the evening, and so the harvest is a complete minuted, almost dictatorial aspect when you drive people around to make sure that you capture the perfect ripeness without going over the top, but without going too early either. So it's very, very complicated. I've got a lot of respect for those guys, but on the other hand, this is the beauty of winemaking. So this is 100% Riesling from the Grand Cru Schoenenbourg 2019. So let's go on to the color. What do we have here? It's definitely golden, quite deep golden with a gold rim, and a beautiful, amazing viscosity. Again, here it says that it's 13% of alcohol, which would make sense, would make sense, because there is quite a substantial amount of residual sugar. But we'll talk about that when we test the wine. So I'll give you a bit more information about that. So when you produce, you know, a wine like this, you harvest at a maximum potential, even though you know potentially where you want to go. So in 1983, the system of appellation was changed in Alsace, and they introduced what they call vendange tardive and selection grand noble. So according to the grape variety, you have a different level of ripeness that you need, and sugar level and content that you need to achieve in order to put that name vendange tardive. So vendange tardive is like late harvest, and selection grand noble is basically a selection. So you go almost like berry by berry, taking the most advanced berries in order to really have that concentration of sugar, because the botrytis, which is the fungus that attack the grape, kind of suck the water out. So therefore you got a natural sugar concentration that eventually you will get into the wines, because the yeast it cannot absorb and eat and transform all that into that sugar into alcohol. You got, therefore, your amount of alcohol and anything else above will stay in the wine, therefore the residual sugar content. But in that wine, I think they kept it under a dry side, but given what they had to play with, they just wanted to give a bit extra. So I don't exactly know the level, because nowhere it's written, and even the research I've done, but on my palate, I think there's about 16 to between 15 and 20 grams of residual sugar. But we'll talk about that when you taste the wine. Anyway, so on the nose, oh wow, you know, it's open, it's super forward, you know, straight away it's very enticing, you know, it's almost delicious. It has even a sweet touch with to me it's straight away it's sort of lychees, ripe peaches. There is you know, white peach, apricot, definitely a touch of honey, some ginger, some mandarin skin, some orange and some orange blossom, a bit of lemon juice, definitely, to kind of lift up the entire offer on the nose. So again, for it not to be sort of too tart, nor too clumsy. There is definitely a bit of plums to me. There is definitely some spices, even though again here there's no oak. Even though in Alsace they use oak, but they are massive 600, 1,000 liter old oak, that some of them are 200 years old. So obviously they maintain them, you know, year on. But so it's more about what we call oxidoreduction. So it's the one to have an exposure to air via through the oak, but there's no implementation of flavors such as vanilla and cinnamon that you would get in smaller barrel and obviously in new oak barrel, as we talked about before. Definitely for me there is a sort of cinnamon character, but the cinnamon is more to do with the ripeness than, again, from the oak treatment, and also the ripeness due to the vintage character. But again, is one thing that comes to mind is it's almost like salted caramel. You know, that's almost like mineral salted kind of characteristic, stony, earthy again. It's extremely fragrant, you know. It's almost something that you dip your finger in and then you go, you know, okay, I'll go out tonight. I will definitely meet someone tonight with that sort of flavors on my skin. It's not a tip, okay? Don't look at me.
I was gonna say you have very strange habits, Chris, but that's okay.
You know, again, you know, it's that beautiful intensity. Then the nose, you could just spend the time on the nose, just trying to decipher all the different layers of aromatic that it throws at you. You know, it doesn't stop. Every single time I swirl my glass, you know, something sort of different comes. Now I'm sort of on sort of skin, grapefruit skin, mandarin skin, almost kind of going, crazily like a jalapeno, which doesn't make sense, but to me that does.
What I really like about it is actually the subtlety of it. It's very fragrant, but it doesn't have that sort of like one thing jumps out and nothing else. It just, the complexity of it gives the subtlety of it as well at the same time, because you definitely get that sort of sweet notes on it, but your brain just keeps going because that sort of lots of like stone fruit character, and then some tropical notes, and then some honey, and some lots of things at the same time coming, and it makes it very interesting, I think.
Yeah, the nose is extremely appealing and enticing, and as I said, you could keep on just nosing it. So I just had a taste of it, and it's where you get that sort of ripeness and sensation of sweetness, even though it's not sweet. It's not made as a sweet wine. It's just that extra dimension of ripeness that is deciphered from the flavor profile, but also from that regional sugar that to me is intentional because of the ripeness, but also to give more potential of aging and that sort of beautiful weight that the wines deliver on the mid palate. It's beautiful concentration, but still super fresh. Super elegant, very approachable, very very enjoyable, but very it's super. It's very moorish again. It's you taste one glass and you're thinking, okay, I'll have another one. It's splendidly drinkable and approachable in the expression. Again, what is sad somewhere and beautiful on the other end is most people will not touch a glass of Riesling because they're thinking, oh, the Riesling is sweet and I don't like sweet.
It's more for us, Chris. That's it.
Yeah, that's the part. That's the
beauty part of it.
No, precisely. But what is fantastic with that format is that flavor profile is that you can work with a wine like this from aperitif style, given that you serve it maybe a bit chiller than 13, you go a bit lower, in a sort of 10 to maintain that acidity and to hide a little bit that sort of complexity of sugar, but you can let it warm up throughout the meal and have it with your starter, your main course, your cheese, and finish with your dessert, because that will work wonders with blue cheeses in general. Anything that's got a sort of salted character, Comté, anything that will work wonders. And then on the dessert side, you can also work tarte tatin, because you don't want something too sweet anyway. You can work with honey cake, that sort of spicy cake, which is lovely, because that you got that on the nose profile, and it's a very very large format, very very large plethora of food that you can work with. Again, in terms of Asian, as Csaba was talking about, again, Indian, Japanese food, Asian in general, Chinese, Thai, Korean, will work wonders, because that will, I was kind of elevate as well, hide a little bit some of the spices that some of the food can carry sometimes, according to the culture and where you want to play with, in your ability to absorb the spices. It's a almost a universal one. It works with everything at any time of the day. It could be a lunch wine, it could be a 4 o'clock wine, it could be a dinner wine, it could be an after dinner wine. You see what I mean? It's one of those wines that you can put anywhere at any time and you will please people. You will challenge people because Riesling, and eventually it's probably the best wine to open for someone that doesn't really know about Riesling, that doesn't really know about wine, because it opens the door to something that has so much flavor, a little touch of sweetness to make it easier, and in a drinkability, that is sort of, unique, and the freshness. The Riesling is the beauty of it, is that sort of elongated, super precise, super chiseled, acidity that really really entice and really kind of lift and then adds complexity, add length, and more importantly, as I said, drinkability. It's splendid. On the palate, yes, it's sort of off dry, but there's so much freshness and so much elegance to that wine, and charm, that it's very hard to resist.
It's actually quite interesting how I often think that Alsace and Riesling generally is very underrated in general in general consumption. I think people don't really. Obviously, it had that sort of bad period of sweet Riesling coming into the UK market, and then nobody really liked it when it was badly made. But actually, top quality Alsace Riesling or top quality German Riesling could be probably the best wines you can ever find on the market. And that's what I feel, at least.
I mean, Alsace nowadays, again, because of global warming, the size of the place and whatever, the pricing is going off the roof. But in Germany and Austria, you find some amazing Riesling, or even Slovenia or Slovakia, as a Czech Republic, also start to produce some great Riesling at really very good value for money, without going to that complexity, to that intensity. But exactly, Riesling is one of those great variety that once you get sort of used to it, and you get to understand what that wine will taste like, that sort of nettles, the limey character, the fresh, the herbal, the apple, the Granny Smith apple acidity. It's one of those wines that you never stop drinking. Personally, this is one of the wine in general, Riesling and German Riesling. This is one of the things I always start with, champagne first and then German Riesling. So that's the beauty of Riesling. It's still something that it's a great variety that still have so much to offer, that is, as Csaba was saying, still rather undiscovered and underrated. I mean, to me, I would drink Riesling anytime, whereas I would not go anywhere close to a Sauvignon Blanc, but that's personal choice.
I second that. I'm very much like that, but I think it's mainly because we are in the wine trade, and we came across so many Sauvignon Blancs, and selling Sauvignon Blanc is, I start crying when I have to do that. No, I shouldn't say that, because a nice Loire.
You're gonna have to cut that. You're gonna have to cut that.
I'll cut this as well. But no, but generally that's what I feel as well. But anyway, it's everyone's personal choice. I'll be interested.
Of course, and there is fantastic Sauvignon Blanc, as there is fantastic Sylvaner, or lesser or better or whatever grape variety. But Riesling is a unique expression that has so much to offer, so much varieties in terms of its offer, from bone dry, like really bone dry, to extremely sweet. But the key is that acidity that remain within the wine, that always give you that sort of drinkability, approachability, and edge profile. Those wine ages for forever. They just, the acidity is their spine, and then give that longevity to stay in the cellar. And even you would think, oh, this is a 50 years old Riesling, is dead. No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not that it's never dead, but the acidity will always remain and maintain that kind of a livelihood within the wine. It's fantastic. It's really, really, really fantastic.
I would be very interested in well, first of all, what was the favorite out of all three?
I tend not to drink that much white. Generally, if I have to open a bottle of wine, I would definitely go red, personally. But to me, yeah, I'm a bit torn between the Vino Nobile, because I think it's such a fantastic all around. It's an all rounder, It's a kind of crowd pleaser as such. But the Riesling has just so much to say, so much beauty, so much charm that yeah, it's actually hard to beat.
It's funny because that's obviously it shouldn't. It's never really the true way to judge a wine, because the price point, it comes from different places, comes from different terroir, different element of work goes into it. Although saying I've been to Alsace, and when you look at those hills, I wouldn't want to climb them, especially not with buckets of grapes on the back of my head, on my back. But Riesling is the cheapest on tonight's, and it's always a bit of a shocking factor, because I think Riesling is generally tend to be quite an expensive grape variety. But yeah, I think for me, because I tasted the Crianza before, because I tasted the Riesling before, and I never tasted the Montepulciano, I think I'm just gonna order a bottle of that immediately when we finished with this call. And I think I absolutely loved it. I was super surprised about it. The Riesling is 23.45 a bottle. The Montepulciano is 26.95. The Hesa de los Canonigos, I hope I pronounced it fairly well, is £30.95. And any questions to Chris regarding to his terrible habits about putting wine over here and everything, and going out and things like that, or anything else wine related? Because
yeah, that's what wine does to you. It has that sort of just unique flavor profile that sometimes just take you somewhere else. There is sort of you could even go to the point where there is sort of two type of wines: the wine that you kind of drink with people, in a party, whatever, and it's those most the philosophical wine where you sit down by the chimney, the fireplace, almost, with a book, and you sip them, slowly, and then you get into that sort of trance between the book absorbing you and the wine giving you that sort of relief. And I think to some extent this is where the Riesling is somewhere.
Guys, thank you very much for your time. If you
thank you, Csaba, to invite us.
Hopefully we'll see you guys on the next one.